And we're back live on Chicano Tube, live on Chicano Street. Do me a favor, mi beautiful linda raza. Just hit the like button if you like, or you can hit the dislike. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I'm joined, and I have the honor to be joined. I have the honor. This is one of those pinnacle moments. I don't know what YouTube channel wouldn't want to have the mayor of their city on, but I'm joined, and I'm honored to have former mayor and now running mayor for the city of Salinas. Of course, my city. Of course, the demographic of the people that are here are from the Alisal districts or are from Salinas. So, Mayor Donahue, I appreciate you coming to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great, and thanks for the invitation. As you and I were chatting before we got on air, I've been doing some podcasting myself, so I'm used to being the one asking some questions. So. It's probably good for me to have the tables turned a little bit.
Refreshing. Is that the City of Salinas podcast? Is that the main podcast that you go on, or the Growers one you were talking about?
No, the Growers. No,
Okay.
I've done. I'm currently doing one affiliated with my role as Western Growers, the director of the Innovation Center.
Okay.
And I'm working with an international partner, and that's called the Grower Talks. And then a couple of years ago, for about 5 years, I did one called Voices of the Valley. And then I did a personal one during COVID called Imagine a Great City.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great.
and a lot of that was, as you know, there's a lot of conversation about public safety these days, and so that was kind of at the heart of that series. So I think I did about 13, 17 episodes. I was looking at it the other day, but that was more geared towards the city. But all private.
And you pretty much have noticed that podcasting has been growing substantially.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, media, it's almost, I don't want to say television is non-exist. Of course, we still have football and everything we want to see on the television, but people are going to their phones now more and more.
No, podcasting accompanies me on my morning walks. So I'm listening to a couple every day.
Oh, that's great. So Mayor Donahue is here, the Salinas. He's running for office again. Mayor, let's just go ahead and start the podcast off. But first, again, just hit the like. Everyone that's coming in the comment section, I appreciate you guys more than you know. Mayor, I wanted to ask you this because you are seeking re-election.
Right.
Okay. Why at this point are you seeking re-election when, well, you've had the crown already and you've proven with experience and had a great tenureship during those years, but why come up, rise from the ashes, let's just say, and seek election?
Okay. Rise. Okay. Well, a couple of things. First, it was really an honor to be the mayor. I enjoyed it. We had some challenges, but at the end of the day, I really enjoyed serving the community, and that always stays with you. You never really lose that. But to be more specific, I didn't foresee myself ever doing this again. But when Mayor Gunter passed away a couple years ago, that's what really planted the seed, because that, at least to the general public and myself included, and I certainly knew Joe. It was a surprise and unexpected, and so you kind of start like, well, the city's going to need a mayor. So I started thinking about it, and Mayor and I think fortunately, because I think she's done a fine job, Mayor Craig stepped forward and she decided to run for office, but that kind of planted the seed.
Okay.
And then when there became a job opening again, I said, well, you know what, it's now or never. Just in terms of thinking about it, but specifically, I certainly don't view it as unfinished business. But what I do understand is the role of the mayor, particularly the role of the mayor of Salinas, because Salinas is really a high-profile city, perhaps more so than we recognize. It's a city with an international reputation because of our ag industry and that type of thing, and I really, in order to address some of the issues that I'm sure we'll be talking about this evening, you have to have resources, and so that really does speak to economic development. And the reality is, a city is never going to have the same kind of resources as a state or a nation. And when it comes to economic development, that's the landscape we're competing against. So mayoral leadership, if you know how to play the position, can matter. And so I believe I can contribute to the positive economic trajectory of the city, which can lead to more resources for the city and more opportunities for the residents of our city. Because, we're still a relatively young city in terms of average age. And frankly, I've heard one too many times, my son or daughter or grandkids don't feel like they have any opportunities here. And I'd like to change the outcome of that story, and where we are creating more opportunities, because Salinas is really very family oriented. Families want to stay together. My own son recently moved back to Atlanta because he just said, Dad, I ain't sticking around for 50,
Change the scenery.
Well, $750,000 and 1,500 square feet and not enough opportunity. And I like the kid. That's, but on a very human level, that means you don't get to see your granddaughter Nutcracker Ballet and see her growing up and those sorts of things. So that's kind of the personal reason that really motivates me. That I really want to see if we can create more opportunities for our young people. But then, from a mayoral standpoint, I do recognize the terrain of the city, and I really feel very strongly we're really not currently set up to meet the hopes and expectations of the community in terms of their key issues, and resources is the way we've got to be able to deal with that. So I tell people, if you really believe a mayor can positively impact the economic future of a city, then my experience at City Hall and the neighborhoods is fine. But you also need to be effective in Sacramento, Washington, and I'm just very fortunate because of the opportunities and business background that I have. I've got a set of global relations that I think can bring good things and help with diversification. I talk a lot about Agtech. The ag piece is good, and and I'm proud of my background there. But the tech piece sets up the diversification opportunity for the community, where you have technology. You're going to have opportunities for better paying jobs, higher wages, and that's really important, because some of the issues we've got to deal with, for instance, like housing. Yes, we need more affordable housing, but we also, besides growing vegetables, need to grow wages so people can afford to live in the area.
We're going to get to that too.
I'm sure.
We're going to get to Agtech, housing.
Yeah, no, I suspected you were.
A lot of other things. I want to back up a little bit, Mayor. What were you've been the mayor of Salinas previously.
Right.
What were the years and how many times?
2006 to 2012, so 3 2-year terms. So the mayor,
back to back.
Yeah, 3 times.
Okay.
Yeah, so 3 times. My favorite election was the second one. I ran unopposed. Those ones are easier to win. So I served 3 terms.
Yeah, that's like a walkover, like uncontested.
Yeah.
Well, I think that at that point there's a consensus between everyone. Okay, he's the right man for the job.
Yeah.
And just like you said, but you bring a lot of experience.
Right.
One thing you did mention right now is your experience and your support. Who is behind you now? You recently have been endorsed, and these to me are major endorsements. I mean, they hold a lot of weight.
Right.
And what I'm talking about, which endorsement it is for one, you have the Salinas Police Officers Association endorsement. They don't just endorse anybody.
No, and I was very pleased to get that endorsement, and then recently also received the Deputy Sheriff's Association's endorsement. So so those are the folks who are familiar with what's going on on the streets.
Yes,
but the Police Officers Association was very, very meaningful, and I was really honored by that. And I think that's an important one because the public safety conversation in Salinas is usually
it's a topic.
Yes,
it's a topic.
It's a topic, and it often has some intensity associated with it. So I was honored to get that endorsement.
And another major endorsement that you received on the campaign trail is the current sitting mayor of Salinas, Kimberly Craig. I think she's done an outstanding job.
Right.
You got that endorsement. I mean, how do you feel about having those two endorsements?
Well, they're terrific, and I think they speak to a good 1-2 punch, so to speak, in terms of some important voices in Salinas. But I also want to note, and this is important because you move a community forward in a collaborative fashion. So I'm honored to have Supervisor Alejo's endorsement, Supervisor Lopez's endorsement, and more recently, Simone Salinas just announced his endorsement for me. And he's kind of a triple threat: former council member, supervisor, and assembly member, and highly regarded. So those are really three very, very important endorsements. But the other thing is there are a number of community leaders representing some of the other, like the Mars Rockamora and the Filipino community,
Oh, yes.
Munyi, the Korean community, Albert Fong, the Chinese community. And those is important because Salinas is a city of, I like
Staples.
to say, yeah,
They're
in one
staples in the
city
community.
and many traditions. I mean, we're a culturally diverse city, and so to have the community leaders' endorsements, that matters as well.
The Rotary Club, I think.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce,
Chamber of Commerce.
endorsed me, but I was also pleased to have the Support of Labor Union International 270. I really try. I want to serve the entire community, so I really, and I hope when people look back in my time in office, and I think I got pretty good marks for this. Not everyone's going to agree with you, but I think people know I was motivated by just serving Salinas. And so when you operate like that, I think you're able to put together a good coalition of folks who want to work together. The ultimate North Star anytime you get kind of a tough call, because it isn't easy to keep everybody happy, but you try and go, what's the North Star? And the North Star is always what's the best thing for Salinas as you see it, and that always guided my thinking.
Well, great. That's great. And I want to start talking about certain topics.
Sure.
The first one that you brought up, I think you passed by it right now. You mentioned it was crime.
Right.
Now, so you were mayor from 2006 to 2012.
Right.
From what I'm understanding, Salinas has had 2 years that the homicide rate hit a peak. One of them, I believe, was 1994. There was 1 year, I think there was 24 homicides, and then another year was 2009.
Right.
What were the challenges the last time that you were a mayor that you saw as opposed to what you see now? Do you see crime different during your last tenureship as you do now?
The answer to that is yes and no. Certainly, we went through a tough spike in youth violence, and I had been involved in that issue since the 90s. I was on the board of the Second Chance Youth Program. Like all citizens in Salinas, it was on everyone's radar. Certainly concerned about it, and certainly we saw a spike during my time in office. But what I'm really most proud of during that period is the way the community responded in terms of we working with Judge Price and the Monterey Children's Council. When I came to office, I introduced the idea of a community safety alliance. Let's take the idea of peace, a peaceful community, and can we go to the next level and build more structure around that? And then when you see so many people trying to do good work, we were able to bring things together. And much of our efforts were modeled after what was going on in San Jose. And then I was very, very fortunate to develop a terrific working relationship with Congressman Farr. And as a result of that, we were able to become part of a national program under the auspices of the White House, the National Youth Forum. And so, and it was interesting because we were able to work with Detroit, Boston, Chicago, San Jose, and Memphis, and Salinas. So Salinas, while it was a bit of an outlier because of our size, in many respects we were kind of the perfect rural-urban petri dish in terms of our size and the nature of our problems, because heavily rural or ag influence per se, but all the complexities of
Right.
of a larger city. And that organization, the Community Alliance of Safety and Peace, and and it's still operating. People came together to really address that problem. And sometimes I tell people, and believe me, I understand. Trust me when I tell you, when you're the mayor and violence spikes, you feel it, and
Your phone is ringing.
yeah,
Your door is getting
yeah,
knocked on.
yeah, and
The
that's
city council meetings,
yeah.
they're saying, where is the
Yeah.
mayor?
Oh, absolutely. But one of the things I think people need to recognize, because I can tell you, as I would tell the community, I want you to know how many people of goodwill, smart, intelligent, with resources are working on this problem, and still you might have a spike. So what that speaks to is the actual nature of the challenge. I mean, think of everybody
Right.
who's working on this,
Right.
and what you have to do. So and the community really came together, and we certainly always knew, and we're very comfortable. I mean, that might not be the right phrase, but look, even if you're doing all the right things, the nature of the other team, so to speak, is
Right.
they're going to be spikes, and sometimes they're things beyond your on your control. And for instance, one of the things we did, we reached out to the U.S. Attorney's Office in San Francisco, brought in a number of state and
Resources.
federal agencies, resources, and and we did
Clean
something
the streets
called
up.
Operation Knockout. But when you knock a few folks out, then you shake the trees, and then you get, and then when the leadership, when everybody decides to go after, okay, who's on first again, there can be more activity on the streets.
Was that during when you were in
Operation
office too?
Knockout
Operation
was
Knockout.
that was something
One
that
that we were involved in.
yeah,
the
that we were
local
involved
agencies.
in. So, that was, and we did a good job. I mean, we were very committed to. We understood that issue, that you needed to be dealing with prevention, intervention, enforcement, and then there needs to be kind of a fourth pillar, whether you call it restorative or redemption, because you certainly want to believe. Look, a lot of young people who get caught up in that are looking for a way out, and so you want to create
right.
those possibilities. But at the end of the day, the enforcement piece has to be right for the whole thing to work, because then the other things don't work as well. But the gang issue is, in my mind, somewhat straightforward in terms of police work. You know what you have to do. In terms of, I mean, you're working the pillars, but if something happens, the police activity is fairly predictable.
Right.
You're going to try and
There's trends.
get with the community, try and catch the person, et cetera, et cetera. Today, when we talk about public safety, and no conversation in Salinas should take place about public safety unless we talk about staffing levels, which is a critical issue, which we need to discuss. But today, and I'd like to think some of this is due to a lot of terrific work that so many people have done for a number of years now. You don't necessarily see the same homicide levels, which is good, but always remember the things that you're doing. If they're working, you want to keep doing them so it stays the same.
It's proven.
Yeah, you don't want to take your foot off the brake. But what you do here when you talk about public safety and policing today is you hear conversations about traffic fatalities, speeding through residential areas, sideshows, wild animals, homeless in terms of the homeless outreach team, because a lot of the encampments, have a criminal element that have become part of that, and that speaks to, in my mind, you have to have the right staffing levels, and some of those things are more random.
Right.
How do you anticipate them? How do you get on top of them? And some of those things might speak to the use of technology, in terms of, when we were doing the gang deal, everyone got enamored with the public did. The police, sometimes I'd hear mixed things about the value of Shot Spotter. A shot.
Oh, right, the
right on time.
sensors.
But what's the Shot Spotter equivalent of they're racing down a street? So that, in my mind, a lot of those things speak to staffing levels, presence, which equals deterrence. And so when I was the mayor, and this is simply a chronological statement, nothing anybody who I served with can take credit for, but the needle kind of fluctuated in terms of staffing levels between 180 to 187 officers. Yeah, and then there's a certain supervisorial component to that, so everybody's not necessarily on the streets. Today the number is about 130, budgeted at 159 in terms of the city budget. Every police chief I have talked to over the years since I left office, even while I was in office, said the optimum number for a city the size of Salinas is 210. And we're talking about 130 possible retirements pending. Right. And so this issue of when I say, are we set up to meet the needs of the community, and there's a current conversation in Salinas, defund the police, who is, who isn't, and it really the conversation needs to flow from what are the resources we need to have a safe city. If that number is 210 and we're budgeted for 159, this $500,000 here and there, well, the real question becomes, where does the extra $15 to $20 million come from in terms of the general fund? So we need to have there needs to be a serious conversation about, what do we need to do from a policing standpoint to keep the city safe? Now, getting more officers has been difficult and challenging. So that's a multi-year build out, but what can we do in the meantime? And retention is an issue because we had a young police officer who I did the equivalent of a podcast with, a community conversation from the Police Officers Association, and she said retention is really important because officers know folks in other departments, and so sometimes they're your best advertisers. So that's important. But I also think, and the reason I like this young lady, she's a terrific young officer, grew up in Salinas, went to North High, but she ended up spending the first, working a number of years of Jamba Juice. But, great interpersonal skills, well organized, athletic, sharp.
Was that the young lady on the video I saw that's circulating on social media?
Exactly.
The police officers.
Yes, and now that is not a criminal justice major from San Jose State.
Okay.
But she's been a police officer for 8 years now, and so I think we're also going to have really think in terms of cast a wider net on where we're recruiting. And I mentioned Imagine a Great City, the podcast I did. One of the folks I interviewed was the former police chief of Fremont. Her name was Kim Peterson, and she was a soccer player from Stanford. Okay, so, athletic and all that good stuff. A biology major. Usually you're not thinking about biology majors going into the police force, but she happened to do a ride-along, and she was hooked. So I think we have to cast a wider net. Plus we have to, and we are committed and take seriously our Explorers program and how do you grow your own and that type of thing. But this issue of staffing is really critical, particularly when you think about the types of challenges that I've outlined, because it really speaks to presence and the ability to respond.
Now let me ask you this: as far as crime goes, do you have a tough on crime approach, or is it there's a lot of new ideologies nowadays, right? You were talking about defund the police as a new ideology. There's also another ideology of more not punishment but rehabilitation that seems to be a slap on the hand, let them go, good faith, and I don't know, criminals were breaking the law. Because I grew up in Salinas, I was a misguided youth. I had my skirmishes in with the law. Yes, back then, the soft on crime approach, I would have liked it because I would have, had a lesser punishment. But it was the tough on crime approach that caused me to do the 180 and made me realize, oh, I was just a misguided youth.
Sure.
Are you tough on crime, or what's your approach or are you soft on crime? I don't even know if that's the right thing to say.
Yeah, and I'm not sure tough or soft is the right term.
Okay.
I think I am certainly an advocate for community policing in terms of the police are there. They serve as guardians. And they also provide services. But, as I mentioned to you earlier, you kind of have to have this four-pronged approach of prevention, intervention, and enforcement. And the police need to be able to do their job. And so I'm a huge advocate of the police department. I think it's important, and I think Salinas does a good job of this.
Supporting them in their decisions.
Exactly. I mean, I think you have to stand by police officers. The police business is a little bit like politics. Now, I view things as community service in a political arena, but that phrase in politics, it ain't beanbag.
Right.
I mean, they've got a difficult challenge. If you're a police officer in Salinas, you're in the business.
Who's the police chief now?
Has yet to be announced.
Oh, it's a race.
It's a
race.
Chief Felice left, and so his replacement hasn't been hired. Acting chief.
Or interim? No interim?
Acting chief Murray
Acting chief.
is. He's been replaced by another interim until the city manager announces his selection. Apparently, somebody has been chosen. I don't know who it is, and they're waiting on a background check.
I wanted to ask you one other thing. Just kind of switching maybe themes a little bit. Don't forget to hit that like and hit that subscribe. We got some questions for you. Disco El Supervisto said, what will he do in his first 100 days? What would be the priority? I know you were talking about allocating money, looking at what Salinas needs, because I believe if you don't have a safe city,
Right.
you don't have anything. What would you do? What would be your priorities?
I completely agree with that, and obviously, to me the key areas, because this is very much a quality of life election in terms of what's on folks' mind. Public safety is on people's minds, but so are their sidewalks. So are paving streets and that sort of thing. All those things speak to resources. And one of the things I tell folks is, look, we're not in position to meet the hopes and expectations of the community immediately. So for instance, should we have 200 police officers? Well, that's going to be a multi-year build out. But obviously, and the city. The police chief reports to the city manager, but the mayor should have a good working relationship with the police chief, because the mayor can be the part of the team that's working in Sacramento and Washington to help secure resources where necessary, or be an advocate for the city and our department. I mean, the mayor has a platform, and I certainly would intend to use it. But I think the in terms of the 100-day question, and it's a fair it's a fair question.
Seems to be a common question. Like the first 100 days set the tone.
Yeah, well they do. I mean, I certainly am going to be very very zeroed in on, what are the things we need to do on the economic development side. Now there's some big picture things. As I've mentioned, ag and Agtech is a diversification opportunity for business attraction. So that's good. But we also have to support the businesses that are here. And one of the things you hear over and over, and is there's the permit center, the plant has been a persistent problem for decades. And so if you talk to a lot of the local business people, I still remember a conversation with a local architect, and we were talking about attracting new business. And he finally looked at me and said, "Hey, listen, if that's really what's on your mind, you better fix that permit center." So a lot of people aren't happy with it. And I know the people who are there, and I like them. And I was on the planning commission up until recently. But the bottom line is there is a strong perception that department is not working the way it needs to. And so that is going to be certainly an immediate priority, because that is something that's internal. You can control that. You don't necessarily knock on a company's door and say, "Hey, we want you to come to Salinas," and they immediately come.
Right.
But one of the things that's personally important to me, downtown is moving. We've been fortunate that we've had a great business champion downtown, but it really is time for the LaSalle to reach its full economic potential. So one of the things that's of interest to me is, can we revisit something that was in our the LaSalle marketplace concept?
Right.
But two terrific developers, two big pension funds, a lot of resources, great game plan, and then unfortunately, both of them died prematurely. Not at the same time, but the lead unfortunately passed away, I think, due to cancer. So that project went by the boards, and it had great potential. And there's a lot of interest and excitement around LaSalle and the LaSalle Vibrancy Plan, but you need an economic engine to
We need
really
funding.
Yeah, and so
It takes money.
It does take money, but I do think we have a lot of very serious business interests that if we can get them working together, I think we can revisit that plan. So I'm interested in the marketplace. I'm interested in the permit center, and very, very frankly, I am quite interested. Some of this stuff, in near term, may be getting into the weeds, but there's a lot of interest in Salinas and Agtech. So I think that gives us an opportunity to, for instance, I recently went down to Mexico City I accompanied the chancellor of UC Davis, and then somebody from the strawberry industry, and they were looking at developing a binational economic development strategy. So I wanted to go down there with them, and we went to Mexico City and Guadalajara and really get a sense of what that looks like. So I'm really intrigued by some of our global possibilities, particularly with Mexico, because we have an economic corridor into Mexico out of the Salinas Valley every day. So what can we layer on top of that with the idea that Salinas will be the gathering spot? Now that's a big picture idea, but I've spent a lot of time working with coalitions, convening and connecting. I think most people give me pretty good marks for vision and connecting. But the other thing is, I want to give credit to also the people who are doing a lot of great work in the area, whether that's MBEP or the Business Council. A lot of people are doing a lot of good things. So it's important to have somebody sitting in the mayor's chair who understands that, sees all that, knows how to connect that, and can represent Salinas interests also. So leadership is a big part of economic development. So economic development's number one. Number two, I really do want to sit down with the city manager and the police chief and go, okay, look, how do we accelerate helping get the build out that the chief and the city needs on staffing. The other thing is, and Chief Felice was very good at technology and interested in technology. Where do innovation and technology matter in the police business? Now, I don't pretend to know the police chief or the police business like the police chief, because one of the things you learn as the mayor, if you want a well-run city, get a good city manager. If you want a well-run police department, get a good police, because they know the business.
Right.
But that said, they also understand it's teamwork. And so one of the things, I understand the innovation world and, how that works. And that could be something that I can help the chief with. So getting focused on the public safety thing, and then the other thing that I think is very, very important is we're going to have some pretty serious and quick conversations about the infrastructure game, because my back of the envelope calculation is we're $1 billion give or take in arrears in terms of streets, sidewalks, facilities, and then keep in mind we're growing. We have a new police station, but if you get to build out of the future growth area, which over time could give you 11,000 homes, are you going to need a police substation? If you talk to the fire folks, they'll say, or some will say, 3 out of the 6 fire stations need to be replaced. So a
lot of challenges.
Yeah, they really are. And so what I tell people, my wife does all the money at home, and when she says we need to talk, I was like, uh-oh. But the reality is, when it comes to infrastructure, we need to have a serious conversation with the community. Look, here's really the deal. Here's how fast we can go. And so, but they'll say, that's great, I understand that, but how can you go faster? And I have some ideas. But the other thing that I think is important is I'm going to take a close look at the budget from the standpoint, are we doing some things that, maybe from the community standpoint, their priorities might be public safety and roads. And, I want to look at the budget because candidly,
prioritizing our money.
Yeah. And, we may be spending in some areas that we shouldn't be.
Gotcha. Those are the first 100 days.
Yeah.
Sounds like you got a lay of the land already.
Yeah. No, I've got a game plan. So yeah. So I'll be
on November 6th. Is it November 6th, or do they have a transfer of power in the mayor's seat? How
well,
does that work?
I'm told that
you went through it, right? When you exited.
Well, the new council, I'm told, will take the oath of office December 4th.
So there is a ceremony where you go to the council.
It's a council meeting, yeah, and
sworn in.
Yeah, and that's a nice, joyful day, and that's probably the easiest council meeting I'll have.
That's officially day one.
That's day one. But you're getting ready prior to.
I wanted to ask you, just segueing into that, the city council of Salinas has changed.
Right.
I mean, there's players that were there. Steve McShane was there a while.
Right.
He no longer wanted to seek re-election and just decided to do personal interest. And we're all grateful for Steve and all the work that he did. And then Mayor Craig didn't seek re-election.
Right.
There's different people on the city council. And with the new city council, how is this relationship with mayor and city council work? You propose something, Salinas needs this, Salinas needs that, and then the city council, how does that whole process work? Say you have an idea, or you wanted to change something, an initiative or crime, or just present something to the city council. Is there times that they fight back against you and they say, no, mayor, or is this like a electoral college, or how does this work with the city council? Because you're stepping into a new city council and you could be experiencing this.
Right. Well, my favorite answer in ag is, and it may soon become a favorite civic answer if I have the privilege of serving, is it depends. a couple things. The council, every 2 years you potentially have a new council. Incumbents could be reelected, and you might have the same city council. The mayor's up for election every 2 years. Everyone else is 4 years, and it's rotating. Every council has its own dynamic, and I know a lot of folks have been very, very concerned about the council dynamic in recent years. And there've been a lot of terms bandied, whether it's dysfunctional or not. And and what I tell folks is, I certainly intend to start with a clean slate. Also, we don't know what council I'm going to be if I'm elected.
No, because their seats are up too.
Yeah, you've got 5 positions in play this November. So, which is unusual
That's
because
the whole council?
well, it's 5 out of the 7. So 2.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
7.
yeah.
There's
So
7
there's-
districts.
Right, 6 districts, 1 mayor. The mayor is elected by the entire city.
Okay.
But when Councilmember McShane resigned,
Yes.
they appointed somebody to fill out his term, or to go until November, and then November would kind of serve as a special election to finish his 2-year term. So whoever wins District 3 will not serve a 4-year term. They will be up in 2 years.
District 3 is South Salinas?
South Salinas.
Okay, that was Steve's.
But the big picture is 5 out of the 7 positions are up for election. So we don't necessarily know.
Who's going to be on the council?
Yeah. So I don't know the
air.
answer to that question. And
What are the challenges? Have you experienced any challenges with any other prior city council?
well, the
Personalities sometimes clash.
sure, I that certainly has happened. I mean, I'm was fortunate that we all worked pretty well together, and the but not always. But I was fortunate that I served on a council that everyone thought they were doing the best thing for the city, and that's important.
See, what if you have a council and all of them are saying defund the police? And here you come in and you're talking about increasing the budget.
Right.
Because maybe there's a spike of crime or
Right,
whatsoever.
right.
And then here we start. What's the workaround on that? We've got to find a common ground.
Well,
somewhere.
I think the workaround, if you feel strongly, is you've got to be able to engage the community, but at the end of the day, if I think it is very, very clear to all parties concerned that the majority of residents in Salinas are interested in a strong, robust police department. Now I think they have opinions, community policing, and how do you do business. But I think it is pretty safe to say that the community is very, very interested in a strong and effective police department, and I think everybody's going to be mindful of that. I mean, I'm not going to not advocate for that. Regardless, and if
some core values there that we
exactly,
public safety needs to be number one,
right.
And if there is no plan B as to what this defund the police, how that's going to play out in the long-term game, doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Under no circumstance will I stop advocating for a strong, effective, community-oriented police department that provides the services that it's very clear to me moving around the community that I know the community wants. And if to the degree things are being voted on, if you lose, you lose. But I will consistently and respectfully state my position. I also will not hesitate to go to the community on a strong issue. And I think ultimately that's the answer. The important thing, I'd like to believe, very, very frankly, and I think this election is going to make it clear to anybody who's representing the community of Salinas that the residents of this community value the police department. And as I say, I think they also have clear expectations on how the department does business. And we've been very fortunate that we've had, I think, some pretty good police chiefs that get that.
I wanted to get to another topic. This is Chinatown.
Sure.
Chinatown in Salinas. I grew up in East Salinas. I grew up in the Alisal district.
Right.
That's District 5, right? Is Alisal district? No. I'm sorry.
Alisal is more it's really 2 and 1.
That's Tony's district,
right? Tony, but Tony Alisal. One is has a little bit of that, but fundamentally it's 2.
It's District 2.
District 2. Yeah, District 2.
So I grew up in the Alisal district, and and we ended up moving over to Soledad Street.
Right.
By the time I was going to enter middle school.
Right.
And just today, I spoke with a property owner who has 2 properties. They're commercial buildings, small ones, in Soledad Street, but in Chinatown.
Right.
And I called him because as realtors, what we do is we cold call.
Yeah,
And then we get to meet a lot of people. I talk to 50 to 100 people, 50 to 150 people every single week.
Right.
And so when I got a hold of this property owner, he can't sell his property, those 2 properties, because of the location. He feels that that's the unattractiveness of his small little buildings, which is on Soledad Street in Chinatown, segueing into the Chinatown problem. I'm sure this has been brought up at the city council, which is the Chinatown issue, homelessness issue.
Right.
Is there a plan in place to do anything with the Chinatown district in Salinas, or is it one of those things that, well, where are you going to send people? Are we just, here, there? Because other people say they're going, this homelessness is a problem, is attracted by the cities that are offering the most resources, but then it almost sounds inhumane to not offer resources because they're humans just like we're human. Is this thing just on a hamster wheel going to get solved? Because they put a lot of housing down there, and there's been housing, developed.
Right.
But the Chinatown area, what are your thoughts on that? If you had a magic wand, what would happen, etc.?
Well, the homeless issue really does have, and you did a nice job laying out the levels of complexity. The homeless deal, in my mind, and it's a little bit like peeling the layers of an onion when you break down, the problems and the causes. Now, you've asked about geography.
Yes.
And when I was the mayor, the homeless issue was really starting to pick up and get on the radar. Obviously, it was there, but it
was more minimal in the 90s.
Well, it was certainly managed into a more central location.
Yes.
And then it has since dispersed,
exploded,
boomed. Well, it has, and California and Salinas is not alone in that.
No, not at all.
And I think to Salinas's credit, they have tried to get directly involved. They've adopted a housing first strategy that if you can get folks housed, then you're in position to and get them shelter, then you can provide services. Unfortunately, some of that strategy, with the monies were received, grant monies to purchase hotel properties. And
make them low-income housing.
Well,
or
shelters, and then from there you provide services. Unfortunately, Salinas was amongst a number of cities that got caught up in the
budget cuts.
Well, no, the Shangri-La deal, where the operator of some of these properties went bankrupt. So that slowed down. I attended one state of the city, and homelessness has been reduced by 10%, and they're working towards 30%. Reducing homelessness is good, but I'm not sure that's the right metrics, because one of the things that's changed is and I believe, to your point, and you brought it up, Salinas is a compassionate city, but I think the verdict is clearly in. That idea of do you want it in a fairly central location, or failing that, then it just spreads throughout the city.
Okay.
And that the verdict is in.
So is that like a middle ground that people have found? Okay, it seems like it's
I think
growing, but we can control it.
Well, no, I think the challenge is we have got to create a consensus on how we're going to manage the problem on the back end. I think, and Simone Salinas and I during when I was in office, we were involved in the Lead Me Home continuum, which working with the Tri-County area in terms of providing services. So kind of this whole coordinated entry of folks who are in that situation. How do you move forward? Veterans are part of the mix. They have access to specialized resources, which is good. So you want to try and make sure you get those connections. Where you have situational homeless folks who, if you really can get them housed, they're best positioned to get back on their feet. But then you get into the very difficult conversation of substance abuse,
mental health,
and mental health. Now, when you break those things down, that's when you get into the systemic and structural issues. So, for instance, substance abuse, we do have programs that do a very good job. Whether it's a Sun Street or the Bridge, I certainly think we've got to, see if we can build more capacity on the back end. When you get into mental health, then I think you get into some real challenges.
So it sounds like it's been contained, but it's just so complex.
Well,
no one has the formula.
Well, I
think
a
wand and everyone is clear.
At the end of the day, and this is why I ultimately go back to economic development. When you break down a lot of these issues, resources. So I often tell people, look, it's not that we don't necessarily know what to do in Salinas. It's do we have the capacity to do it? And I'll give you a very simple example.
Sure.
We were really working hard. How do we create more positive alternatives for young people after school?
Right.
So, there was some talk about getting a Boys and Girls Club in the 93906 zip code. But a Boys and Girls Club can only service, let's say 400 to 500 young people. We had 6,000 teenagers in that zip code. So you know what to do, but 400 to 500 only meets a tenth of the demand. Likewise, in terms of number of beds, facility. When you get into mental health, you really are starting to talk about, having sufficient facilities to house them. And the other thing is, the city's part of the mix, but this is why it becomes very important to be able to work collaboratively with the county, which the city and the county are doing. But you have to have the capacity in terms of caseworkers, number of beds, et cetera. But I think the community has, and there's all sorts of conversations ranging from tiny homes to more hotels, but the thing about services, folks have got to be able to take advantage of them. So I do think as you begin to attack those numbers, you have to think about the back end of programs and opportunities. But I also, frankly, think we're going to have to think about more facilities, and that's an expensive proposition. And the other thing is, a lot of this does come down to, I certainly support the Salinas, the SORT team, the Salinas outreach team. The police officers, here again you get into numbers. Their homeless outreach team.
There was talks of a shelter out there in the ROP area, and Lord, did they ever build that?
They did, but that only.
There was a lot of outcry from that community out there. They did not want that near them.
Well, and that's just it. So
can't please them all.
Right, but so think about the fact that it has now spread throughout the city. So say, okay, well, we're going to try and consolidate all that.
Contain.
Right. And then do you bring that, do you try and manage that back into Chinatown, which is hungry for revitalization?
It is.
And so.
Just like I cited with that property owner, right. It seems like the area has devalued his property,
right.
And I'm still going to help him, but he's going to have to pretty much sell for under fair market value because there's no other business that's going to get in there,
right.
And want to establish a business
right
in the heart of Chinatown.
What I certainly would say is I believe this is a compassionate community. I do not think we have developed a new consensus yet on how we want to, what's the 10-year path we want. I mean there are great people, great resources, and yet the problem is persistent. But I think the public has weighed in. This idea of, particularly when they hear there are alternatives, the encampment issue has to be addressed, and because nobody thinks that's a way to live, and so it's a thorny, tough issue. Here's what I am. I certainly And someone asked about the first 100 days. That's certainly something we've got to get on right away. But I want to see if we can develop a clear consensus on the direction we want to go as a community, and I'm happy to, and again, I view this as community service in a political setting. I'm happy to be judged on we've got a plan. I'm happy. But nobody can impose this one single-handedly. But if we can get a clear community consensus, and I really believe this as a community, fundamentally we need to look at some of our key issues and go, look, we need the equivalent of a 10-year game plan of this is the way we're going to set sail, and we develop a clear civic, political, and community consensus on this is the way we're going. Now, you might do it in 5-year increments. Here's how you lay the foundation. But we need to do that. And the one thing I'm certainly willing to do, is be, and I know there are a number of other fine public. I'm certainly willing to be politically accountable for an outcome, but I don't think we have a clear consensus because the problem has evolved. And so we need to decide how we want to deal with that. And very, very frankly, again, this is when I talk about mayoral leadership. This is not going to be just a city hall driven solution. Because funding's going to be an issue. I think the private sector is an issue in a different way, and I like to point out the bridge as an example. It's kind of a Rancho Cielo type of program that, but the bridge is also involved in the
Right.
rehabilitation piece. But then you've got pathways, whether it's janitorial or whether it's culinary. And those things are going to be necessary to break the cycle. I think the mental health piece is particularly challenging.
A strong component.
Well, it's a strong component, and it does speak to facilities. And nobody wants to go back to One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, But the reality is, we really don't have the facilities we need to address some of those issues. Because some of them, all you have to do is spend any time on the streets, and and I've had whether it's Dorothy's Kitchen or serving at the Methodist Church. You can evaluate things and where are the challenges, and what do we need to do really, and facilities and caseworkers are part of the mix. But this city has plenty of compassionate folks, but they also really the public health piece. The quality of life, the physical appearance of the city, those things are important. And again,
you're gonna have a full plate when you step back into the office. You're gonna have a full plate. Let me go ahead and get the last question. This is just the last question, and I was trying to keep it to 1 hour. And we got about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
But we have to talk about this because at the city council, at the city of Salinas, there's the sign, and it says "rich in land and rich in values."
Right.
So we're gonna talk about ag.
Sure.
Okay. So, 2 things I wanted you to address, and we will wrap this up.
Sure.
Don't forget to hit that like button. We got Mayor Donahue, who's got the endorsement from the Police Officers Association, current sitting mayor Kimberly Craig, and of course Chicano Street's endorsement. He already has that. So let me ask you this about the ag. There's 2 concerns.
Sure.
One is that Agtech will eventually in the future replace human beings and their jobs.
Right.
That's one concern.
Right.
That it's going to replace. That means the evolution of Agtech will
Sure.
replace people's jobs. And 2, I wanted to ask you regarding pesticides and chemicals.
Sure.
Because it seems like there's helicopters flying every day.
Sure.
I don't think they're spraying water over the crops, and that is something that's affecting our health.
Sure.
And since what I've heard on the radio, talk radio, is that it's a $2 to $4 billion industry. Is that the number more or less on the ag that you think? And then those 2 questions about ag replacing workers,
Sure.
and pesticides and chemicals. Is there any research being done on
Sure.
that? Because that's going in our
Sure.
bellies.
Well, a couple of things in terms of the industry. So the annual crop report for Monterey County and Monterey County, depending upon market values in any given scenario, is generally the fourth or fifth largest crop report in California's 58 counties.
Wow.
But we are actually, give or take, 28th or 30th largest crop report in the country. So we're actually bigger than many states in terms of farm gate value. So that puts Monterey County in perspective. Typically, your economic multiplier of your farm value is $2 to $2.50 per. So when you hear we're an $11 to $12 billion ag economy,
I heard 4 to 6.
well, 4 to 6 is typically
Is that a net number?
in terms of a multiple. Well, no,
a gross number?
Well, our crop value fluctuates. During COVID, it dropped down to under $4 billion, but typically we're going to be between $4.5 billion to $5 billion
wow.
in terms of farm gate value, the value of the crops.
Right.
But then the economic multiplier, the tractor dealer, the inputs, the machine, the fabricator, et cetera, the harvesting companies, et cetera, that's a multiple typically of times 2 or 2.5.
Okay.
So that gets you into it's a 11, 12, $13 billion local economy. And, the Monterey Business Council just had they brought in an economist, and, ag is 50% of Monterey County's economy.
Hello.
So, yeah. So,
What do you think about Agtech? Is the evolution of Agtech going to replace laborers?
Well, the answer is I'm always intrigued by that question, because everyone who tells me
Picturing robots. They're picturing robots.
well,
or
they do,
something.
but it's
But
interesting.
robots, I don't ever picture them in the fields
Well,
picking berries, lettuce, and strawberries.
well, here's what I would say: we have an aging workforce, and so technology has allowed us to keep up with what we need to get done. When there are always going to be people in the field, I think the general thinking of Agtech is it's going to improve working conditions, create higher skilled jobs, and better wages. The actual displacement of people
is a myth.
I don't know that it's a myth, but I think jobs can certainly evolve. But I'll give you an example. A lot of people talk, nobody's cracked the code how to automatically harvest strawberries. And a woman who I really respect for one of the major companies said, I don't see it displacing jobs. What it could do is change how strawberries are packed. Instead of everything's done directly in the field, it could be it's brought from the field to the side and packed to the side, which is very similar to Central Valley packing sheds. The citrus comes off the trees, but then it goes into a packing shed. So it's still a lot of different people. They're just different jobs.
So processes are evolving, but not really. The laborer is not.
Yeah, I mean,
will still have a job, but it just seems like there's more efficient processes. Is that the evolution? People are picturing robots like the Tesla robot.
Well, believe me, there's some funky looking machines in the field these days. All you have to do is go see the laser weed or carbon robotics, and that's so. But like I say, what technology to date so far has done has allowed us to keep up with an aging workforce. The other thing is if we do the right job of stimulating our local economy, people like there could be new opportunities. So I would say anybody who says it's going to get rid of people per se, they've got more information than me, and I've been around this thing for 10 years. Do I think things will evolve? Do I think there'll be new positions? Yes, but on balance, better paying jobs, better and hopefully opportunities. But the other thing to remember is ag sometimes gets reduced to what we see.
Right.
So we see the fields, but people don't see what a big, robust industry it is in terms of R&D, seed development, sales. It's a much bigger field. So there could be an ag evolution. What happens in the field could change.
Now, I do got to ask you about the pesticides.
Sure.
And
No, and I'm
chemicals.
happy to answer that.
Me and my wife, we're health nuts. We're health
Okay.
nuts.
All right. All
Me
right.
boxing for 10 years
Right,
got
right,
me
right,
become a
right.
health nut. She's a health nut. We watch what we come in.
Right.
We loved when Bobby Kennedy was going to bat on
Right.
chronic disease
Right.
and bringing to light if he becomes a cabinet member,
Sure.
all these things. Pesticide. Is there any research into pesticides and chemicals, or are there already departments that regulate that? But do you think that's efficient enough? Because I'm not a farmer. I don't know why these berries have to get sprayed 3 or 4 times. It almost sounds like preservatives to make the food last. Or
No,
is there
no.
any research into?
Oh, sure. Yeah. No,
Go ahead.
there's tons. And, you know, I would tell you, and in fact, I think you'd appreciate hearing that. First of all, the tools of precision agriculture allow for more efficient spraying, specific. And it reduces. It should reduce the amount of material that's applied to a crop, the timing of a crop. But I think your bigger question is, you know, one of the initiatives that I'm involved with the Innovation Center is we recognize we're heading towards a world, you know, we kind of call it, less chemistry, more biology, you know, which is integrated pest management. So if you think in terms of a pie chart, you know, the percentage of synthetics is in many respects is going to decline and biologicals is going to increase. So for the last 2 years, and I'm involved in a global initiative, it's called Platform 10, and I work with my New Zealand partner, and it's all about biologicals, and we recognize that trend. And so for the last 2 years in Salinas, we've hosted the Salinas Biological Summit, worked closely with the Secretary of Ag. We've been honored to the head of the Department of Pesticide Regulations, Julie Henderson, has joined us, and we recognize that the input world is going to change, and that there will, you know, that the public, folks such as yourself, are interested in less pesticide use, and so we certainly see the world moving in that direction, and we want to be ready for it. So that's actually something I spend a lot of time with, and
that's a component in the whole ag research. Or
oh,
ag
yeah,
that
yeah,
you're gonna
no,
do development.
You know, our grower base, you know, at the end of the day, the marketplace, which your question represents, the marketplace is consumers. We recognize that is of concern to folks. It may be
GMOs, preservatives, anything extra. It's of concern.
And I will tell you,
our children.
Growers do not gratuitously apply inputs because they're expensive. There is no incentive to use anything more than you have to, so that's number one. Number two, when I first got in the industry in the late '80s, the whole focus was making sure the fields were safe for the harvest crews to get in there. We live in a world of things, you know, residues need to be, you know, parts per million and that sort of thing. So that has been front and center and certainly part of what folks are thinking about. You know, I mentioned, and I'm not at all glib about it, but it's true if you think about it in terms of weather conditions, pests. You know, when you see, you know, it depends on the crop, it depends on the time of year. You know, for instance, as you get to the fall, due to heat, there may be a lot of pressure. So you might encounter something like aphids, and just the reality is, you know, receivers don't want bugs, they don't want blemishes, and but we know the challenge these days is to
try to go organic.
You're going to see more organic. There's conversations about regenerative, but at the end of the day, you know, scale-based agriculture, you know, you've got to be efficient so you can meet the volume demands of the country and North America. But we understand people are interested in fewer what we call synthetics.
Very last question before we wrap up. Is Mayor Donahue going to be developing all of the ag and turn everything into malls, or are we going to be keeping ag because we're an ag-centered
Well, I certainly hope.
economy.
I certainly
I've heard
hope.
of that spoken of too many times at the city council
I,
meetings.
I certainly hope. Our natural resources, this valley, the weather, our climate, that's that's our history. That's who we are, and I'm certainly a proponent of ag and a healthy, robust ag industry because it is the setup for diversification
and balance with development.
well, the city
People are always going to be talking about housing.
well, we are, and that means you do have to, the bottom line is part of that answer is more supply. Now, the future growth area, which has been set up and we annexed that area into the city when I was the mayor. That's scheduled. The future of the city was always directed to grow out to the north and the east. So the future growth area will be part of that, and then obviously we need to look at infill housing. We may have to look at. Certainly, we understand we need more workforce housing. Whether it's apartments, townhouses, or condos, but we want people certainly to be in position to own their own homes. More supply is how you begin to.
Right.
You and I were chatting. I don't know that the market will drop as extremely as
Right.
the house you were able to purchase in Gonzales, but supply. One of the problems we have is we haven't built anything in a long time, and Salinas needs to build more housing, pure and simple. But it also needs to build the right kind of housing for the folks who. So I certainly understand that, and that will be front and center. Because people who grew up in Salinas, and this is one of the things I really like about people want to stay in Salinas because I've traveled all over the world, and this is a special spot. And I often tell people, we certainly have our tussles over, resources, water, viewshed, et cetera, et cetera. But if there is a county worth fighting about in this planet, it's Monterey County, because the quality of life is pretty darn good here, and Salinas is a terrific city. And if you grow up here, you just might want to live the rest of your life here, and we want to make that as possible as a real possibility for folks.
That's a great outro. Salinas is a terrific city. You guys, November 5th is coming up really, really soon. Again, the crux of all of us subscribers are from Salinas, you guys. So when you see the ballot, you could vote for experience or you could not. And obviously, experience comes in the name of Mayor Dennis Donahue. He's on the ballot. Go ahead and vote for him. We're live on Chicano Street. Thank you, Mayor. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it. It was a fast one.
3 or 4 key points that Salinans want to know and wanted me to ask you.
Well, no, and I appreciate that. And part of the experience is, and what I appreciate about this conversation is, obviously you have to calibrate answers when you encounter the facts. And I always listen, and I learn from the community. But what I tell people, I'll answer issue-related questions, but I think fundamentally what goes along with experience is, how do I think? Do I have vision? Am I strategic? And those are important dimensions to being an effective mayor as well. How do I approach things? Do I reach out? Do I know the right people? And will I engage the community? So a problem-solving orientation is also part of being a good mayor.
That's right. He's on the ballot, you guys. Dennis Donahue, November 5th, re-elect experience, because the Peace Officers Association, the endorsement from them. The current mayor of Salinas is also endorsement. And, of course, he has more endorsements here on Chicano Street.
I appreciate
you guys,
that. Thanks for having me.
No, we appreciate you. It's such an honor. It's like a pinnacle moment in the YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Thank you again. And I've already voted.
Oh, good.
So I've already voted. So you're already penciled in there. You guys,
terrific.
if you haven't voted already, go out there, vote in person. If not, go ahead and send the ballot in and scratch in Dennis Donahue. Thank you again, Mayor, for the conversation, you
My
guys.
honor.
We are out. We'll catch you guys live tomorrow night. You already know the show, which it is on the Friday night show. So we are out, you guys. But remember what I always say, remember what I always say. You guys have a good evening, but in the end, all you got is the memories.